Time for the final word in sports all across the state. You're listening to Sports Talk with your hosts, Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. You've been waiting all day, so join the show now by calling 800-956-7266.
It's just another game. It means nothing. And I can speak for everybody that played for him. It means nothing, and it's a game we need to win against a good opponent.
Just proud of our guys for their efforts. We pitched extremely well. We had one inning where we didn't do a good enough job of catching and throwing the baseball, but made some nice plays and obviously came up with some huge hits and some huge moments. So came from behind, won the series, obviously in dramatic fashion, and very, very proud of our team.
A pleasant good afternoon and evening to you and yours, and welcome to Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network on this Tuesday evening, the 8th day of May, 2018, along with Phil Kornbluth, Will Pelagic here with you. Professor Tom Hayes has the evening off. An epic Clemson comeback, 2 more Gamecock commitments, one in football, one in basketball, and also some confirmation on 2 Clemson commitments that turned into transfer signings today from head coach Brad Brownell's Clemson basketball team. Telephone number to join us, 800-956-7266. That's how you get in touch with us. Email talkback@sportstalksc.com and on Twitter @sportstalksc. I mean, where do you start, Corn? We had an amazing baseball game last night. I would argue between the 2 ball clubs, probably the most epic ball game that we have seen this season, and probably with the most on the line. And the drama certainly fit the moment and the national television audience. And Jordan Green had what Monty Lee again called the biggest at bat of the year for the Clemson Tigers in a victory.
Yeah, indeed. Great win for Clemson. Big RPI win in terms of beating another top 10 team. It moved the Tigers up 2 spots to 8 in the RPI. It further solidified their place atop the division race, keeps them very close to North Carolina in the overall championship race, knowing that North Carolina still has 6 more league games to go, including 3 against Duke. And it also enhances Clemson's likelihood of being a host for a regional once again, once the ACC tournament is over with. So in many, many ways, a big win for Clemson. Again, Monty Lee, in his time at Clemson, the one thing that he has been selling to his players and to the fans is that lunch pail mentality. You never give up on a ball game. And, you know, they chipped away in that. They got the 2-run homer from Beer to tie it up. And then a most unlikely source for the walk-off home run in Jordan Green. Not that he can't hit a home run, but certainly that was not expected in that situation.
You know, sometimes head coaches and managers in baseball, they make a move and the players make them look like a genius. The fact that you pinch hit Jordan Green in the number 9 spot where Robert Jolly was, you move Sam Hall from second base to left field. He makes the unbelievable running catch in the top of the 9th inning that saves a run, keeps the lead or keeps the game tied in the 9th inning. He leads off and then Green hits the home run. I mean, it's a fortuitous move and maybe the move that puts Clemson in a situation where they can host for the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament if they get that far.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Which is nothing new for them. They've done that the last 2 years. Their thing is they got to get past that. They got to get to the super regional. And what they're, of course, trying to do is make a case to be a top 8 seed. Then if they win their region, they'll be home for a super regional. And the numbers tell you that home super regional, the home team does pretty well in those super regionals on the way to Omaha. So that's very, very important. Today is the day that D1 baseball usually puts out its projections for the tournament. Still waiting on that to come out. Usually they have it done by mid-afternoon. Maybe because of, I don't know, the last night's game or whatever, they have been tardy in getting it out today. I would think that we're going to see Clemson where it has been hosting as a number 1 seed. The question will be where South Carolina will be this time in their projections. Have they done yet to move up to the 2 line, or will they still be on the 3 line? Where will they put them? Will it still be Greenville, North Carolina? Will it be Raleigh, North Carolina?
Would it be Clemson?
Would it be Clemson or
Conway?
See, Coastal hurt itself by losing 2 of 3 over the weekend. And, you know, you wonder now, I mean, Coastal, despite being a national champion just 2 seasons removed,
still struggling to get that respect.
They still have to have that super duper season to be in the conversation for hosting, even though they have the beautiful ballpark and they can put upwards of 5,000 plus in there for that kind of a situation. So
their conference hurts them, though. That's the problem. Their conference hurts them. They play enough games out of conference, evidenced by the fact that they will play North Carolina on Wednesday. What was scheduled to be the return engagement of that 2-game home-and-home series that they play in Chapel Hill with North Carolina, the North Carolina portion of that was washed out by rain. No word on whether or not they're going to try and play that again, just to help Coastal Carolina possibly get another RPI victory. But they will get the home engagement of that here coming up tomorrow, as will South Carolina get the engagement with Chad Holbrook. And the, again, grudge match, whatever you want to call it, the chance to see the former Gamecock head coach. You heard the clip in the beginning there with Hunter Taylor. And I don't know if that was meant maliciously, Corn, but again, it just seems to me that there's something percolating from the Gamecock clubhouse underneath kind of all that coach speak and that cliche speak, that there might have been some residual anger that's left over from last year's ball club.
Could be. I think that there are some ruffled feathers among the Gamecocks, if you pardon the little pun there.
Very nice.
And you can go back to what L.T. Tolbert said again. We mentioned this last night after the comeback against Clemson on that Sunday, though they fell short. They did rally to make it a tied ball game. And I think that there are some veterans here who, for whatever reason, have some hard feelings toward their former coach. So, you know, South Carolina's going to start Mazinski, and they will have their regular lineup out there. And this is a nice RPI opportunity for both of these teams. I mean, the Gamecocks are 42. The Cougars are in the 70s. South Carolina's not had a good record against midweek opponents this year. It has hurt them. We pointed out their number of losses to teams in Group 4 of the RPI, and that's not good when it comes down to evaluation by the committee. Plus, you want to finish strong down as you go down the stretch. So, good ball game in a great setting tomorrow night over at the Spirit Communications Park. It should be a tremendous atmosphere. I do believe the Gamecock fans. Listen, I can't tell you how to think or how to act, but I think you should be courteous and polite to Chad Holbrook for a number of different reasons. Okay, whatever you thought about how things ended last year, you need to forget about that. And I would hope that the people would, when his name is called out as part of the lineups, that he would get a nice ovation from the Gamecock fans. I
was over at Spirit Communications Park earlier today to pick up my credential, and I was talking with the people there who are in charge of selling the tickets. They said they've sold about between 3,000 and 4,000 already, and they're expecting about a walk-up of about 1,000 to about 1,500. So they're hoping to get about 5,500 in the park tomorrow night. So that should be a good turnout. And even saw some Gamecock fans and College of Charleston fans over there at the ballpark picking up some of their tickets.
Which would be greater in terms of actual fannies in the seats than compared to a typical midweek game over at Founders Park, because they haven't drawn actual big crowds. They announce, totals based on their season tickets,
right?
Which I guess is over 6,000, and so that would be a bigger crowd. Now, if they were to play this game at Founders Park, I imagine a nice crowd would turn out for it as well. But this
particular game, I think they would, with it being the first time.
Exactly. But you mentioned the novelty of it, the fact that it's Holbrook's return. It's at the minor league park in Columbia.
And they will serve beer, by the way.
Well, there you go. That's all the more reason to go out. Let's don't go out there for the baseball game. Let's go out there for the 16-ounce brew.
It's probably overpriced.
Whatever they're going to be selling. But besides that, big day for
USC
Gamecocks, in that they acquired a point guard from Georgetown, who we're going to be talking to here at the bottom of the hour, Trey Campbell. And kudos to South Carolina and Frank Martin and his people, because they snuck this guy into town last weekend on an official visit. I don't think anybody knew about it.
No.
Outside of those right inside the family of the program. And South Carolina got a football commitment today from a 2020 offensive lineman out of Miami, Isaiah Walker, a commitment that was acknowledged with the Spurs up by Will Muschamp. And this is a big offensive lineman. Still got a couple years to go. He's not going to shut down his recruiting just yet, but he goes on to the 2020 commitment list for the Gamecocks, and it gives them 3 in the 2020 class.
You mentioned something that Will Muschamp said on Twitter. The South Carolina men's basketball coach also said something on Twitter that was rather cryptic, I could say. And I don't know if we have anything official on it, but I think we should throw it in the speculation meter about what he might have meant when he said that. We'll tell you what he said coming up next, and also talk a bit more about a USA Today poll that has a very early ranking for the top 25 in 2019.
Sports Talk is the sports talk show of Main Street, South Carolina. From the coast to the mountains, we cover it all.
Welcome back to Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. With all the wheeling and dealing, there is some other housekeeping to kind of talk about. Rakim Felder, we found out today that he is going to play his redshirt sophomore season at New Mexico Junior College. So the former USC point guard has a soft landing spot. And Clemson men's basketball has confirmed the signing of both Jonathan Baer, the transfer from UNC Asheville. He'll sit 1 year to play 2. And Javen White, who basically came in over the weekend and made his confirmation and commitment to the Gamecocks from Oral Roberts. He is a graduate transfer with immediate 2-year eligibility. Second grad transfer under Brad Brownell. Mark Donnell did the same thing for them.
Yeah, and Javen's going to be with us a little bit after 7 o'clock. So tonight you'll get a chance to hear. If all goes well now, these are scheduled, and hopefully the guys will stick to the schedule. You'll hear from both of the incoming grad transfers for USC and Clemson. The Campbell kid, interesting story about Trey Campbell, and that is he was one of the top point guards coming out of high school in Washington, D.C., both in that area and nationally.
Went to St. John's, very, very highly touted school.
And he has been basically a backup at Georgetown throughout his career. His best year was his sophomore year when he averaged about 20 minutes per game and 4 points per game. In his junior year 2 years ago, you might recall in February of 2017, the Georgetown team bus was headed to Villanova on I-95, and it wrecked. In fact, it flipped over several times. Fortunately, there were no fatalities and not too many serious injuries. However, he injured his knee in that accident and did not play against Villanova and played very little the rest of the season. And so, for whatever reason, some had speculated that the injury caused this, but for whatever reason, he did not play this past season. He got his release from Georgetown in August, but he stayed at Georgetown on scholarship. So he just didn't play basketball for a team, but he was in school this past year. So he's been kind of stewing on the side, not playing any basketball for a team. And so South Carolina knew about him and obviously made the contact, brought him in for an official visit last weekend. And he announced this morning his plans to come to South Carolina. The last point guard South Carolina had from Washington, D.C., named Trey, was Trey Kelly.
Oh.
And he turned out to be quite good for South Carolina. Not that one has anything to do with the other, but, you know, this is a kid from the city who plays that style of basketball, probably, and he's going to be an older guy, tough, hard-nosed. We'll find out more about him when he joins us here in a little bit, but he's probably a guy that is kind of cut in the mold of a point guard that Frank Martin likes to have.
I'd say Frank Martin does love those big city guards, doesn't he? That's kind of something that he has a blueprint for. He did his Spurs up equivalent, if you will, by saying we just added to the Gamecock basketball family on Twitter. But then he put out something a little bit more cryptic. He said, I can confirm from a source close to all situations that everything is done. This was 4 hours ago.
Yeah.
And of course,
now, is he being serious about something, or is he just poking fun?
I don't know, but you and I have both been working our collective behind-the-scenes sources. Can't tell you anything definitive on that, but, I mean, maybe it's a Brian Bowen update that we get, and the reason we say this is that Frank Martin is scheduled to speak with the media tomorrow. So I'm not saying that there's an update on anything, but Frank Martin is certainly acting like there's something afoot.
Well, it's his end-of-the-year wrap-up press conference, even though basketball's been done for quite a while.
We've been waiting on this for a while now.
Yeah, but he usually waits because he likes to get through recruiting. He likes to kind of have an idea what his roster is going to look like. Now, he still has 2 spots open on the roster as it stands now with the addition of Campbell, but we should have, it should have dawned on us yesterday when we saw that there was going to be a press conference that Frank probably had a couple of cards up his sleeve and was about to fill out the roster in some form or fashion. So this could do with perhaps Jalik Felton.
Or Bandu.
Jalik Felton. It could be Bandu. Jalik Felton tweeted out something today along the lines of the comeback's going to be, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, the comeback's going to be a great comeback or something like that. he has his tweets protected. So somebody else was telling me about it, so I could not. Right now, I am not one of those in his inner sanctum to be able to read his protected tweets.
You're not there.
We're not there to be able to read his protected. I want to start protecting our tweets. If you protect your tweets, does that mean people can't say nasty things about you?
It means that you don't see them. They can say anything they want. You just can't see them.
Anyway,
it's not good for a news source to do something like that when they're trying to use the Twitter handle to promote their product.
No, our tweets are wide open, baby. Always have been, always will be.
Sometimes to our detriment.
Yeah, true that. So anyway, he could be just toying with us. There was not like Frank to toy with the media. But it is like Frank to try to blindside the media by hinting at something and then revealing something that we did not know.
Well, the weirdest thing about this whole situation is that the Gamecock basketball roster has gone through some what I would call attrition by a lot of different circumstances. Not a lot of this is necessarily these aren't players that necessarily would have had a long-term impact other than maybe Rob Felder. There really wasn't anybody who left this roster other than the ones who graduated that were going to have a long-term impact on the South Carolina basketball team. I don't think. I mean, Corey Holden, maybe if he had gotten himself back to health, but again, he had looked like a shell of his former self at the end of last year. Rob Felder was somebody who you basically predicted to be your point guard, but there were things that Frank Martin said that Felder did not accomplish in his time in order to satisfy Frank Martin's eligibility requirements, if you will. The others, the postmen, Kadeem Gay and Ibi Doumbia, those guys were still projects and guys who were not going to be immediate contributors. So
yeah, but
this is a blow up of the roster. Well, what this is,
no doubt about it. But I mean, I don't know the backstories about those guys leaving and David Beatty as well.
Yes,
but I mean, whatever happened to developing players and making them better between their freshman and sophomore years and building that way instead of constantly blowing up your roster and starting over again. There's something to be said for that. The guys that got South Carolina to a Final Four were 4-year guys.
Right.
They came into the program, they were nurtured, they were developed. It all came together along with a mixture of some younger guys, and the result was a run to the Final Four. So I also have to question decision-making in recruiting. I mean, if you recruit a guy and you bring him in and after 1 year you jettison him, that's on you as a coach and on your staff for making poor judgment, unless they've done something, outside the realm of basketball that forced your hand to boot them away. If you booted them away because you discovered they're not going to be good enough, then you're not doing a good job of evaluating players.
This could take a page out of kind of the new way that new baseball teams think. Let someone else develop the young pitching for you, and then you go poach it when they're free agents. And they've done this with the graduate transfer market. They let Oral Roberts develop a play. I'm sorry, Clemson did this with Oral Roberts.
Clemson has been
Javen White.
Brad Brownell has been the king of the rebound recruiting, as I call it.
Yes.
Getting the guy. He hasn't been so great on the freshman market. Though he's gotten a few guys in that are going to be good players for him, but he's making his hay on the rebound market. The transfers, the grad transfers, those guys are the ones that are. I mean, look at the team.
I mean,
look who the best players on Clemson's team is right now. They're all practically all transfers.
I mean, Marquise Reed was a guy who
transferred.
Shelton Mitchell's a transfer.
Thomas is a transfer.
David Scarra was a big contributor for them down the stretch last year. Was transferred. Mark Donnell was.
Yeah.
I mean, again, maybe this is Frank Martin taking a page out of that methodology. Granted, the two guys off of last year's team that you could consider. I mean, what would this team last year look like without Frank Booker and Wesley Myers?
Oh,
it would have looked more.
It would have been dead in the water,
and it already did look a little barren.
They might have averaged 50 points a game.
That's what I'm saying.
I mean, they had no outside shooter besides Booker, and he was, of course, a pure outside shooter.
And again, the thing that you have to keep in mind is what's coming on down the pike, the 2019 class. And granted, that 2019 class in South Carolina decreased by 1 with DJ Burns reclassifying to 2018. So maybe that's something. Maybe Frank has something in the tea leaves with that particular situation that is going towards his favor. Who knows?
And that's another thing you have to think about. He's got 2 spots left as it stands now, depending on what Silva and Bowen do. But let's say they both come back. That's 11. You're going to leave a spot open for Burns now, and you're going to leave a spot open for Felton. That could be your Gamecock roster right there in a perfect world for them.
And one of those spots is held by Georgetown transfer Trey Campbell, who joins us next on Sports Talk. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. We're brought to you by Founders Federal Credit Union, foundersfcu.com. They can assist you with all of your financial needs. Founders Federal Credit Union, official sponsor of Sports Talk. You know how much, Corn, I love my DC guys. I believe I am standard proof that good talent can come out of the WCAC. South Carolina has done the same with one of its point guards.
You mean you're citing yourself as an example?
I am citing Dorian O'Daniel of Clemson came out of that conference.
Not sure I'd put you in the same category as Trey Campbell and these other fine people. Let's welcome in Trey Campbell, who is now a Gamecock, or will be a Gamecock once all the paperwork is signed. He is, of course, a point guard from Washington, D.C. He announced this morning on Twitter that he plans to play his final season of college basketball for Frank Martin and the Gamecocks. Trey, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
We're good. Thank you for joining us. And, well, congratulations on everything. And tell us how this all came together for you with the Gamecocks.
I appreciate it, but it all came together when Coach Bruce called me like a month ago, was saying that they wanted to recruit me. And so we just been going from there.
Was that the first time they had contact with you about a month ago?
Yeah, it might have been like a month and a half ago. Yeah, that was the first time they contacted me.
Mm-hmm. So what did you think about that opportunity? And, of course, you had other opportunities out there for you. But when South Carolina came calling and said, hey, man, we want to take a look at you and get you involved, what'd you think?
I felt excited. I wanted to play in the SEC. You know, that's good. That's good competition every game. You know, I can't beat that. Playing against Kentucky, going to Kentucky, playing against Florida, all the good teams that's in the SEC. So I felt like I wanted to play in that conference.
Trey, it's interesting looking at kind of the way a lot of these recruitments go. Some of them are more public than others. Your recruitment to South Carolina was largely under the radar. How by design was that?
Yeah, it was kind of by design. I didn't play this year, but I wanted to be under the radar. But I knew once I announced where I was going, it was going to go big.
Being a DC guy, you played obviously in a very, very competitive league in the Big East. You played in a very competitive high school league in the WCAC. How do you feel that experience suits what you will see here in the Southeastern Conference?
I feel like it's going to be good because, the Big East, there wasn't no days off. Every game we had a big game. And also in the WCAC in high school, every game we played against tough teams. So I feel like it's going to be like that in the SEC also. It's a big game every time we hit the floor.
Talking with Trey Campbell, 6'2" point guard, transferring to USC from Georgetown for his graduate season. So What about Frank Martin and his style of play matches up with the way you play the game?
I mean, Frank Martin, he's a cool guy. You know, I got to know him and want to build a relationship with him, and he wanted to build a relationship with me. But his style of play is, you know, he's high intensity. He has a motor to him. I got a motor to me. I can play defense, and I know that's what he likes to do. Play defense, then he can get out and transition and score the ball and on the offensive end.
Yeah, and of course, you've seen South Carolina. You've seen Frank Martin in action. You kind of know maybe how he deals with his players in practice and in the game. I mean, he's kind of an in-your-face kind of a coach. Are you prepared for that type of coaching style?
Yeah, I got to be prepared for it. I'm coming in, so yeah, I feel like I'm prepared for it. Well, that's nothing. That's nothing. I'm not ready for. That's something I'm just going, you know, just mature fast.
I can't remember who it was, Trey, but we were talking to somebody recently who was getting recruited by South Carolina who said that Frank is a bit of a different guy behind the scenes. How is that so?
Because he's not like that. He doesn't. He's not screaming and yelling and in your face when he's behind the scenes. He's more calm and laid back. But once he steps between those lines, he's a different guy.
Trey, your years at Georgetown, 3 years in the program. You had the accident on the bus going to Villanova where you apparently suffered a knee injury. What led to the decision to not play this past season? Was that the direct result of that injury or something else?
No, that was a direct result of that injury. Got surgery in May, and the doctor told me I was going to be out for 9 to 12 months. So, you know, 9 to 12 months, that's the whole season. So I couldn't play this year.
Yeah. What exactly happened with the knee? What kind of surgery did they have to perform?
I tore my meniscus.
Everything good now?
Yeah, I'm good now. I'm 100% ready to go.
What did you learn the most in your time away from the game?
No, I needed this time off. I needed this time off to sit back, relax, take a breather, you know, get the love for the game back, and I'm ready to go.
As far as your offensive skills as a point guard, are you a pass first, score second point guard? What's your mindset as a point guard?
As a point guard, I mean, I know coming into this season, I'm going to have to, you know, score, facilitate, do everything. You know, I mean, I like to get my guys involved, but I know on this team, I'm probably going to have to score a little bit more, but I'm also going to have to contribute to my teammates, too, and pass the ball.
So if there's one thing that Frank Martin loves, it is coaching and instituting a culture that is built around defense. How prepared are you for that?
Yeah, I'm prepared. That's what I mean. I played defense my whole life. That's what something I strive to be good at. Got to play defense to be on the court.
Now, as a grad transfer, do you have to sign any papers, any documents, or anything like that, or you just show up at school?
No, it's just like the regular process with the undergrad. So you got to sign a letter of intent again and go from there. When
do you plan to do that, and when do you plan to arrive on campus?
I talked to Coach Martin about that. He said he's going to send the paperwork over ASAP. And I plan to be on campus, I think, June 3rd or June 4th, something like that.
Pretty quick turnaround. You're in D.C. now, I assume?
Say that again?
You're in D.C. now, I assume?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm in D.C.
And what's going to be your course of studies on the graduate side?
It's going to be leadership.
Leadership?
Yeah.
How did you do against Paul VI when you played at St. John's? I'm just curious.
Paul VI, we played them a couple of times. I played good junior and senior year. I played good. Sophomore year, I can't really remember about the sophomore year, but junior and senior year, I played good. I know we beat them at their home.
Yeah.
One of my teammates, Darren Anderson, he hit a big shot and won the game against them.
I remember that game. That wasn't good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure if they had players like my cohort here, you had no trouble with them. So
we are pretty darn good in hoops now, okay?
Trey, congratulations once again. We appreciate you joining us tonight. Look forward to covering your year with the Gamecocks. That's the thing about grad transfers. We only get to see you for a year, so make it a good one, and look forward to talking to you when you get to Columbia.
All right. Look forward to talking to you guys too. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
All right.
Trey Campbell, South Carolina's newest point guard. And I think, I mean, between him, between Kuznard, between, what they have, I mean, they upgraded that position for sure. And I think that's something that they absolutely needed.
Well, they had to. They had to get some people. They had to get some bodies. You always, you got to be careful when it comes to grad transfers and you think that that's going to be the salvation for you. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, Trey could not break the starting lineup at Georgetown.
Right.
He was a backup there for all 3 of his years. I mean, his best year was 4 points per game. Now, you just can't all of a sudden expect him to come in and be a 15-point, 7 assists per game guy. Or maybe you can. I mean, maybe in a new setting after a year away, the knees mended, a different system, maybe the freedom to do the things that Frank Martin will let him do. Maybe he will turn into that kind of player.
You kind of alluded to this, and I want to ask it to you directly. Do you think that this reliance on graduate transfers is an indictment of his recruiting abilities, Frank Martin's?
I think it is just an indication of how tough it is to recruit at South Carolina and Clemson. Because when you're trying to be among the best teams in the country, and getting talent outside of your state at the highest level is not easy in basketball. They're gobbled up by who. It's in your state, you can make some hay. But again, we saw this year, the 3 top players in the state all left. And now you're going to have Burns, technically 19, but now 18. So he could be one that stays. South Carolina has got to get DJ Burns.
That's a must.
Well, I mean, just from a psychological standpoint, they can't have another top in-state player that they have recruited the devil out of go somewhere else, especially Tennessee. To lose him to Rick Barnes, that would not be good for the psyche of the fans and for momentum in building your program. And then you turn your attention to the bountiful what's left of the 2019 class.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying that's what the fan base is going to think, especially when they see another graduate transfer coming in here and seeing more of that. More from Clemson's epic comeback last night against Florida State and the full recruiting report from Phil Kornblut next on Sports Talk.
Now back to Sports Talk, South Carolina's most listened to sports talk show for more than 30 years.
Welcome back, Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, 800-956-7266. That's how you get in touch with us. If you have questions about where South Carolina's basketball roster sits right now, Clemson's basketball roster, stuff for the NCAA baseball tournament, we'll take any of that and more. We can maybe even kick around more of the Trevor Lawrence talk, because I have some stuff that I talked. The Trevor Lawrence talk.
Who?
People. I did a little work with my Clemson insiders on kind of where that sits right now as well, and I have some interesting thoughts to share.
How many of them, your Clemson insiders, you mean the media guys up there?
Media and other distinguished vested individuals.
Yeah, how many of them have full-length posters of Trevor Lawrence hanging in their bedrooms?
I think I saw
to look at first thing in the morning.
Somebody in the press box actually wearing a number 16 jersey, and it wasn't for a past Clemson player. Just saying. Last night at Clemson, though, it was all smiles for those who wore orange and regalia as the Tigers defeated Florida State 5-4 in the bottom of the ninth inning with a walk-off homer from Jordan Green. Here's Monty Lee following the contest last night.
Sam Hall made the play of the day. Had the winning run at first base. Ball was drilled to left center field. This is a kid that hadn't played very much outfield in his career, period. And for him to make that type of play just shows why he's in the lineup every day and what kind of athlete he is. It's a special play. Logan had a big 2-run homer for us in the third. Wilkie's at bat in the seventh, 2 strikes on him, single up the middle. Seth, 2 strikes on him, hit a home run to the opposite field to tie it. And then, Jordan Green came off the bench with a huge, obviously a walk-off homer. Stood and looked at it probably a little bit too long. We all want to admire our work, but that's I'm a little bit old school. I want our guys to have fun, stay loose, and enjoy the moment. But that might have been a little bit too much. So I do apologize to the baseball purists who were watching on ESPN. But, Jordan's a kid that's in the 3rd year in our program. He's played a lot of baseball for us. And he came up with the biggest at bat of the year. That's the biggest at bat of the year for us up to this point. And just proud of our guys for their efforts. We pitched extremely well. We had 1 inning where we didn't do a good enough job of catching and throwing the baseball, but made some nice plays and obviously came up with some huge hits and some huge moments. So came from behind, won the series, obviously in dramatic fashion, and very, very proud of our team.
Every time you call his number, he brings energy, makes things happen.
Yeah, he has. He certainly has. Jordan didn't play a lot for us early in the year, and we kind of inserted him around that Louisville series. Had a really good weekend at Louisville, had a really good weekend at Notre Dame. He's had some really good at-bats for us. He's a veteran player. He has a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. That's the kind of player he is, and I actually like that about him. He thinks he should be in there every day, and he don't like it when he's not playing. So I think when he gets those opportunities, he wants to prove to everybody that I should be in there on a regular basis. And quite frankly, that's what you want with players who aren't playing every day for you.
How much do you marvel at Seth's ability to perform in the clutch? He had 2 opportunities with him, and he comes through with the second one.
Well, he's done it time and time again. Again, in 3 years that I've been with Seth, I'm running out of fingers to count the big home runs that he's hit in big situations. Anytime I talk to scouts or I talk to people about Seth Beer, the legend of Seth Beer. What is the legend of Seth Beer? Legend of Seth Beer is how many clutch home runs has he hit in his career? He's hit, time after time after time after time when we desperately needed a big at bat. He gives us one. So, again, it's just a testament to his ability to just, he says he's almost like he's underwater in those high pressure situations. And I think that's a really cool way of explaining it. He just has a knack for just zoning everything out and locking in and getting a good pitch to hit and obviously hitting it pretty hard.
Despite how good the Jordan Green at bat was for the home run, Kyle Wilkie had 2 opportunities to get Beer up and possibly get him a chance to tie the game with 2 out with a 2-run homer. First time it didn't work. Second time it did. And again, that guy just continues to have a flair for the dramatic.
Unbelievable player for Clemson. What is that, 48 career homers now?
That sounds right.
I think so. 14 on the year. it hasn't been the
It hasn't been a
eye-popping
gaudy
kind of year.
It's not a gaudy year for him.
He struggled a little bit early on, but he seems to have his stuff together now.
Yeah.
And, once he gets hot, all you want him to do is to get hot for another month or so, and you'll be standing in Omaha.
So it puts Clemson squarely in basically first place in the ACC Atlantic with the series in hand over NC State, sitting basically second behind North Carolina. Again, the series in hand, basically because they had that one extra series that they have to play against Austin Peay before they conclude the season against Pittsburgh. Conversely, South Carolina, despite being in a three-way tie for third, is now the 5th seed because of the tiebreaker.
Yeah, the tiebreaker is that South Carolina right now is tied with Ole Miss and with Auburn, 13-11. Unfortunately, the head-to-head with Ole Miss in a three-way tie does not come into play, because the three teams have not all played each other, and they won't. So you go to the first team from the number 1 seed down that all three teams have played, and that would be Arkansas. And Ole Miss has the better record against Arkansas than the other two. USC would be second of those three teams. So right now, based on the record and that tiebreaker, Ole Miss would be the 4th seed and USC would be the 5th seed, which means USC would play the last game of the single elimination game on Tuesday.
But the one thing that is in play is the fact that Auburn and Ole Miss this weekend play each other.
Correct.
So that will at least knock that out of the woodwork.
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Possibly,
I mean, that's
possibly gives South Carolina a chance to be third by the end of the weekend because they play lowly Missouri.
Yeah, I think all Gamecock fans, if you've got this vent your spleen on something, vent it on the Missouri baseball team this weekend. I mean, seriously, don't take it out on Chad Holbrook. Take it out on Missouri. Let me get to recruiting here very quickly as we approach the top of the hour. And football-wise, USC picked up commitment 3 for the 2020 class. Offensive lineman Isaiah Walker, 6'4", 265 of Miami. He announced his intentions today. Offers from Florida, Kentucky, and South Florida really came down to USC and Florida. Back earlier in the year, Florida was his leader, and Dan Mullen made him one of the first players he visited in January. But South Carolina got on him with Travaris Robinson and Eric Wolford, and they have won the day so far. He did say that this does not shut down his recruiting. So you still have a couple of years here, a kid down in South Florida. He's still going to be recruited and take some trips. So by no means is this a lock, but right now he's on the 2020 commitment list for the Gamecocks. And USC continues to work offensive lineman Jalen Humphreys of Lawrenceville, Georgia. His offer list includes Florida, Georgia, Auburn, Alabama, Kentucky, Miami, North Carolina, Nebraska, Tennessee, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and others. USC was one of his early offers, and he visited back in February, and he's considering USC for an official visit. Standing out the most along with USC are Miami, Alabama, Tennessee, Florida, Mississippi State, and Nebraska. Clemson offered a pair of DC prospects, defensive back Luke Hill and linebacker Mikhail Sherman. They are teammates, I think, at St. John's in Washington. Receiver Jake Smith, who was offered by Clemson, narrowed his decision to Southern Cal and Texas. USC offered 2021 quarterback Caleb Williams of DC and 2019 defensive back Isaiah Kemp of Wilmington. Clemson also offered 2021 offensive lineman Micah Morris of Kingsland, Georgia. 2020 Burns running back Rajay Harris, offered by East Carolina. USC offered 2020 defensive lineman Reginald Perry of Fairfield, Alabama. Per Tiger Illustrated, offensive lineman Jake Hornibrook of Malvern, Pennsylvania, visited Clemson unofficially last Thursday. He's a teammate of Clemson commitment linebacker Keith McGuire. Basketball again, 6'7", 2019 Christian Brown of Lower Richland was offered by Seton Hall, and Clemson has offered Frank Anselm. He's a 6'10" kid out of Atlanta, Westlake High School. He's in the 2021 class.
It's interesting. I keep joking about DC. You have to recruit that league for football and basketball. It is one of the top competitive leagues on the Eastern Seaboard and no real draw for any particular colleges because there really isn't that one up there. We'll talk to the newest Clemson basketball transfer, Javen White, when we come back.
Round 2 of Sports Talk up next with your hosts Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic, and the Professor Tom Hayes. Don't leave us hanging. Join the show, 800-956-7266.
Hour 2 of Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, along with Phil Kornblut, Will Pelagic here with you on this Tuesday evening, the 8th day of May, 2018. We've had a jam-packed show already, still plenty to get to and plenty for you to react to. 800-956-7266, how you get in touch with us. We're going to have our continuation of the spring football recaps, and we'll talk with Chip Towers of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution to recap what happened for the Georgia Bulldogs, projected SEC East top team. He'll join us coming up at 7:20. Kerry Tharp, president of Darlington Raceway, will join us at the bottom of the hour. But first, Corn, we have our chance to talk to one of the newest Clemson Tiger men's basketball players.
Indeed, indeed. Brad Brownell continues to do a great job recruiting on the transfer market, grad transfer, regular transfers. He picked up another good piece for his team over the weekend. Javen White, 6'10", who played at Oral Roberts, graduated from there. And the good thing, besides his talent, is that he's got 2 years of eligibility. So you'll get a chance to know him and to grow with him a little bit as he does the same with Clemson. And he joins us now on the phone. I'm thinking from his home state of Iowa. Javen, how are you?
Pretty good. How you guys doing?
Good, man. Thank you for joining us. Are you back home in Iowa right now?
Yeah, I'm actually heading back to Ames right now. I'm making the drive as we speak. So.
Very good.
That's a rough drive from Tulsa to Iowa, man. I've done that. That is not fun.
A lot of corn out there, huh?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Corn and windmills, I remember from my one time driving through Iowa. Well, first of all, it's good to hear that you're coming to Clemson. I know you're excited about that. Take us back through your process on deciding on the Tigers. You had LSU, Nevada, UMass. It came down to Clemson, LSU. What won the day for Clemson in this competition?
It really just for me, once I got on campus and, got around the guys and got around the entire coaching staff and kind of put myself in the position of, could I see myself at Clemson, and having several meetings with Coach Brunell and kind of seeing how I fit into the system, everything just, sort of matched up for me, and my mom really enjoyed the trip as well. And it just really felt like home, coming back from the visit and talking with my family. I really felt like it was the best, opportunity for me to not only develop my game to another level, but then also have, success for myself and team success as well.
The success that Clemson had this past season with their Sweet 16 run, how much of that opened your eyes about the program? And then when you got a chance to visit and see things from the inside and how they plan to use you, what things did you learn that impressed you?
Well, the biggest thing for me was just the group of guys they already have on the team. I made such a big run last year. Just being able to, join the team and kind of add to the mix and keep that flow going to the next season was something that was really intriguing to me. And then, just like I said, while I was on the visit, just getting to, talk with the guys and whatnot and get a feel for what they're about, get an idea of, what the Clemson culture really is. And, the opportunity to, join a successful ACC team to compete for not only an ACC championship, but, another, big NCAA tournament run was something I just, was really intrigued by and really thought it was a special opportunity for me to be a part of.
Talking, of course, with Javen White, the newest Clemson basketball graduate transfer from Oral Roberts, 6'10", 230 pounds. What did Brad Brownell and the coaching staff at Clemson say about where they project you to play and how they project to use you?
They said, I could play the 4, I could play the 5, switch multiple positions, be able to play with Eli, be able to play with Amir. And just, kind of just fit into the system, any way that the team might need me to. The biggest thing I'll be able to do is bring a lot of everybody into the team, help spread the floor out, on pick and rolls and just really get in the coach's system and keep, the other team, guessing as far as mismatches and whatnot, and being able to switch on to some guards and just bring a versatility to the team that the coach Bernard really, liked in my game.
In your career at Oral Roberts, and this past season, 10 points, 9 rebounds a game, so nearly a double-double. And I believe your career high in points was like 28. And I think you had a 20-rebound game at one point. So, are you a guy at that size that you have that kind of the complete package of a scorer and a rebounder and a defender as a big?
Yeah. I'd say the one thing I'll spend a lot of my summer on this summer is shooting the three ball more, shooting the three and shooting the better free throw percentages. I struggled from the line last year. And other than that, I mean, yeah, inside floor, pick and rolls, pick and pops. I can play really well.
All right, we're talking to. Go ahead.
We played a lot of zona Oral Roberts. No, you're good. We played a lot of zona Oral Roberts last year, but yeah, being able to play, multiple positions in man defense, I think will really, be a benefit as well.
Talking with Javen White, who's headed to Clemson as a transfer from Oral Roberts, and obviously you're a very good student to get your academics done so quickly that you've got 2 years of eligibility. And I know you built relationships, and from reading your tweets and your responses to people at Oral Roberts, you obviously had a good time there and enjoyed your time there. So why not stay and finish your career at ORU? Why did you make the decision to go look somewhere else for your graduate work?
Well, I knew about a year ago that I might have the opportunity to grad transfer for 2 years, and we had a coaching change come up, and as the year went on, the team kind of went up and down in some certain areas and stuff. And for me, it was just about, I had a good time with Oral Roberts and developed a lot of relationships. I just wanted something new for myself and for my family, and new opportunities to really, develop my game and try to move on to that next level and just see how far I could really take this basketball thing. And I decided to, test out the transfer market and made a decision to grad transfer.
I know that you had a knee injury your freshman year. Did that linger to the sophomore year? Is that why you redshirted that year?
Yeah, it happened in an exhibition game, and so they went in and they kind of scoped my knee. I just hobbled through my freshman season and try to play the best I could. But after the season, it was kind of like if you want to have an extensive career, you have the surgery. So I did the surgery and redshirted the year, and it was a long year. A lot of growth, off the court and just trying to develop my mental game and stuff. And then came back last year and was able to play in every single game and play significant minutes. That was really a good sign for me as far as my body being back to where I wanted to be.
So you're going to get a chance to play in the ACC, and I'm sure as a basketball player and a fan, you've kept your eye on ACC basketball, even though you live out there in Iowa. I guess maybe you follow, obviously, Big Ten closer. But anyway, now that you're going to get a chance to play, is there a particular arena that you're looking forward to playing in for that first time?
Oh, man. ACC, there's so many of them. From Cameron Indoor to, Chapel Hill in North Carolina, Syracuse, the Carrier Dome. I mean, there'll be a lot of them. I'll be very excited to play. You get in those opportunities. You just play so much harder. There's so much more at stake. The fans, the energy. So I'm really excited for just overall. Because in the ACC, there's not going to be an easy game. You get every team's best shot, and more than likely, there's multiple pros on each team. So it's really a good opportunity to really measure yourself up against the best competition in the country.
Yeah, you will get a couple of those, by the way. You will get your opportunity to play at Syracuse, and you will get an opportunity to go to Cameron Indoor. So no Chapel Hill trip for Clemson this year, but you'll at least get 2 of those off your bucket list.
Clemson's never won in Chapel Hill in its life.
Really?
Never.
59 times they've played up there. They haven't won.
That's crazy. I know it's a tough place to play.
Well, you'll have to do something your senior year because they're not going up there this year. Yeah, next time around.
We got to make something happen for sure.
Yeah. Well, a lot of guys in your shoes have said that over the years at Clemson, and for some reason it hasn't happened. Maybe you'll be the guy to put them over the top.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind at all. I wouldn't mind.
Well, listen, man, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Sounds like your cell's kind of breaking up. We thank you for joining us tonight. Enjoy your summer. When do you arrive at Clemson? When do you get to campus?
I'll be there the first week in June.
And ready to go.
The first week in June.
Well, we thank you, and we look forward to covering your rest of your career, your 2 years at Clemson. Hope it all goes well, and we thank you for being with us tonight.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you.
Ames, Iowa would be Big 12 country, Corn, not Big 10. That's Iowa State.
Well, I'm just thinking about the state of Iowa. Yeah, I was thinking about the state of Iowa. I mean, when I think of the state of Iowa, I think more of the Big 10.
But Ames,
Ames is
Iowa State.
Yeah, but I'm just saying the state. I think of Iowa Hawkeyes, and they're in the what?
Big 10.
Thank you.
But that's Iowa City, and Ames, Iowa is where Iowa State is.
I'm thinking about the state of Iowa, which is where? In Big 10 country.
It's also Big 12 country.
This is the place to talk Tigers, Gamecocks, and more. Sports talk across the state on the South Carolina Radio Network.
We have had a busy time of it here on Sports Talk here on this Tuesday evening. We've already had 2 basketball commits on the show, 1 actual signee and 1 commit from South Carolina, a couple of graduate transfers. You'll be able to find those on our website at sportstalksc.com. Now we switch the attention back to football, and we continue our recaps of the spring opponents, or for the fall opponents, rather, the spring recap of the fall opponents for both Clemson and South Carolina. We go to somebody who South Carolina definitely will see, and somebody who Clemson Corn might see in the playoffs.
And might see again on a regular basis the way these athletic directors are talking. We welcome in Chip Towers, who covers the Georgia Bulldogs for the AJC, has done so for many years and does a fabulous job. Chip, how are you?
Hey, I'm fantastic. Thank you. How are you guys this evening?
We're great. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it. I guess when you look at Georgia, you still see a very, very good offense and a defense that lost a lot of great players. Should Georgia fans be worried about what the defense is going to be like?
Well, yeah, of course, they're worried. I mean, and there's reason to worry, but I guess the bottom line on that, this is why you recruit. You recruit people to replace those that are going to leave in the cyclical sport that is college football. So there's a lot of guys who kind of plan to be there in those positions eventually. But, last year was truly a special year. Georgia had such strong senior leadership overall, and a lot of that was on the defensive side of the ball. And then in guys, juniors like Roquan Smith, you're just not going to get another guy and line him up and have another Roquan Smith, no matter what his recruiting profile says. So, there's got to be a drop off, but I think you touched on something that's very important there too. I think their offense is actually going to be better, even though you lost some key members. I mean, 3 real key members that went very early in that NFL draft: Isaiah Wynn, the left tackle, and then the 2 running backs that we've heard so much about the last few years in Sony Michel and Nick Chubb. But I think they have replacements for those guys, and I think they're going to be overall just as good, and you could argue better, on the offensive line in the backfield, depending on who you believe. And I think Jake Fromm's going to be a lot better as well. So, maybe it evens itself out, but yeah, there's going to be a drop off on the defensive side of the ball. I don't see how you can avoid that.
How can Jake Fromm be a better quarterback in 2018?
Well, he was a pretty darn good quarterback in 2017. I think we all realize that now. And especially going back and looking through the season, it really is amazing what that young man did, expecting not to play and then all of a sudden being thrown into the fire in the first game of the season, and then leading Georgia in 15 games, and they couldn't have gotten any bigger than they did. But he wants to get more mobile. Excuse me. He wants more marbles to do something with, and he wants to be more mobile.
Yeah.
He wants to be more mobile in the pocket, and certainly throw the ball better. Overall, I mean, there's no question that last year Georgia was set up to run the football and throw off the run, and that's how they got a lot of their big plays. I think Georgia's going to be a little bit more, maybe not run first. They're always going to be a run first team, but I think they're going to be a little bit more pass oriented and spread the ball out, which is what Jake Fromm did in high school his entire career. And I think they'll try to take advantage of some of those skills this year.
Talking with Chip Towers, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, joining us here on Sports Talk as we recap the Georgia Bulldogs spring. I know that obviously the offensive line is a big part of that success, or at least the barometer of that success. How are the Georgia Bulldogs situated? I know that there's some moving parts on that offensive line.
Well, Phil, you appreciate this better than anybody. I mean, Georgia has recruited at a completely different level on the offensive line. It's kind of one of those things you didn't realize how poorly they were doing until you see what they're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, all of it has to generate on the field, but they're just a completely different looking team physically. It looks like they're trying to build the Great Wall of China out of human beings based on the guys they got on the offensive line. So they're much, much bigger. Now, bigger doesn't mean equal better necessarily, but these are high pedigree offensive linemen that they've recruited really over the last 3 years. And the biggest thing is losing Isaiah Wynn, who was really a guard, but had an all-SEC season at left tackle. And I'm hearing now the Patriots are going to play him at tackle. He played so well as a smallish tackle, 6'3", 313 pounds. But Andrew Thomas, the guy who started every game as a true freshman at right tackle, is making the move from right tackle over the left tackle. And they loved what he did and what he showed in spring. So, that was your biggest move. The rest of the guys are just plugging in and returnees. Lamont Gilliard at the center, and I think there's maybe 17 offensive linemen. I mean, they've really over recruited at this position, and there's just competition all up and down the line for all those other spots. Other than center and left tackle, and they like what they have there.
Chip, stopping down on that, the recruiting aspect, is it just something as simple as, the increased success, it provides increased attention? What has been attributing, or what would you attribute Georgia's rise in the recruiting rankings and the recruiting numbers that are coming in to how they've performed over the last couple of years?
Well, it's definitely the Kirby Smart factor. I mean, Mark Richt in Georgia always recruited well, top 10 level based on the rankings. Most of the time it was unusual when they didn't finish in the top 10, but Kirby Smart's definitely take it to another level. And I think that goes on two areas. One would certainly be talent identification. And the second part is just relentlessness. I mean, the guy just doesn't give up. I mean, there's been so many 12th hour flips that he's gotten, 12th hour deal closings on these recruits. And, if you look at, nationally, number 6, number 3, number 1, those are the last 3 classes. They're number 5 right now in the class of 19, which is going to be a smaller class. It's got to be just mathematically from signing, the limit or more the last few years. It's going to be a smaller class. So I doubt if they'll be quite in the upper, 3 or 4 echelon this year, but, still very specific on the needs. He came in and he recognized right away a shortcoming for Georgia on the lines of scrimmages. He moved really hard to address that through recruiting, and he's done that for the most part.
Chip, the quarterback situation, at Clemson, you've got a returning now senior in Kelly Bryant who did great things, but they've got the highly touted, much anticipated Trevor Lawrence waiting in the wings, plus couple of other guys, but they don't get talked about very much. I wonder, at Georgia, despite all the great things Jake Fromm did, and as good as he was, you got the highly touted, much anticipated arrival of Justin Fields, who was an early enrollee. Does Georgia face any of the same type of conversation that Clemson fans are having about their quarterback?
Well, of course they do. Come on, this is football in the South. There's got to be a quarterback controversy. There has been at Georgia the last 3 years. And it's funny, they always want the new guy, no matter what the older guy's done. I guess with the exception of Deshaun Watson, there wasn't much arguing over what that kid was doing. But, there's a competition there. Justin Fields, number 1 dual threat quarterback in America, according to all the rankings, 5-star guy, looked good in the spring game. And, that comes with all those qualifiers that, he's on the number 2 offense going against the number 2 defense. But, physically, this kid is really impressive, and his arm is big time. I mean, he has a better arm than Jake Fromm. He comes with the reputation of being able to move a lot better, and certainly he can. But dude's huge. I mean, I don't think I realized how big he was, but he's totally legit, 6'3", 225. Got a gun of an arm, and so you got to work on the accuracy and reading defenses and all that kind of stuff. But he's good enough that I think, they're going to put a package in for him right away and figure out a way to get him on the field, and he's actually good buddies with Trevor Lawrence. In fact, they were working out this past weekend at Harrison High, I guess on their spring semester breaks. They were over there throwing the ball together and working on stuff. So yeah, those two guys back and forth as to which one was the number 1 quarterback in the country. I think we're going to find out pretty quick from both of them.
You think we'll see both of them real quick as in Columbia week 2?
I do. I mean, I think that's part of the recruiting game nowadays. When you get a guy like that, you got to tell them they're going to get a shot to play, get a shot to win the position. But Jake Fromm's going to be very difficult to unseat. I don't know. Trevor Lawrence got a pretty good situation over there.
Thank you, Chip. Appreciate it. Welcome back to Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, as we continue on a Tuesday. Because it is Tuesday, that means we get our weekly chat with the president of Darlington Raceway Corn. That is Kerry Tharp.
KT, Kerry Tharp joining us here on Sports Talk. And, you know, the race was such a blowout for Kevin Harvick at Dover. It's time to talk about something else, KT. It's good to have you with us, as always. You know what I'm going to go to. The big story that broke yesterday about NASCAR possibly being on the block. Your thoughts about that, the France family, what can you share with us from where you sit?
Well, it certainly was, surprising news when I heard it late yesterday afternoon. And I really don't have any insight for you on it, to be honest with you. I'm not really sure what is going on there behind the scenes down at the NASCAR headquarters. I certainly worked there for 11 plus years and always felt like that, it was, the way that it was set up, was the model that would last, for a long, long time. And I guess it still remains to be seen, what may or may not happen. But I think it's, I tell you, I love the sport and love working in the sport, and so I'm not really sure, Phil or Will, exactly what is going on with that situation. I wish I had more for you there, but I really don't know what will or may or if anything might transpire. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, this is a different situation. You think about a sport being sold. I mean, think about somebody coming in and saying, hey, I think I want to buy the NFL.
Right.
I mean, this is a different setup, of course, because this is still, I guess, basically a family-owned operation with the Frances and whatever it is that they have that gives them ownership. I guess they can sell that to the highest bidder if they choose.
Well, it is. It's unlike any other sports league. You're exactly right, and all the other sport leagues are set up totally different. So there's really no comparison in how NASCAR is set up, and how it was founded almost 70 years ago by Big Bill France, and it's really all ever since the sport was founded, it's been ruled by the France family, and there was no question about that, and so. That's why this story, coming out, just kind of was, and I'm not sure, exactly what to say about it, but as long as the sport's been around, it's been ruled by the Frances. And so that's going to continue to be the case. I know that there is strong leadership in the sport from all accounts and all bases around. So, I'm not sure where this may or may not go.
I'm not asking you to play the speculation game as far as what will happen or what is going to happen, but what, in your mind, are the challenges that would possibly face a new ownership group of NASCAR? And if there is a change in leadership, what would you like to see as someone who's a president of a track from a new ownership group at NASCAR?
Well, I can tell you this: I'm fine with the way things are now. To be quite honest with you, I think the sport is still very, very popular. We have a great platform at Darlington. I'm very, very thankful that we came back to Labor Day. I'm extremely thankful that we have the throwback platform for us to go along with the Labor Day weekend. And again, our sport is unlike any other. It's complex when it comes to how the sport is set up. The teams are independent from the league. The league puts on the events. The league sanctions the events. There's racetracks. There's sponsors. And obviously at the top of the list are the drivers. They're the heroes of the sport. And so it's not an easy entity to analyze or dissect because it's so much different than any of the other sports. And now you have the charters that are in place with the various teams to ensure that they qualify for the races. You have so much input now from the teams and the owners, more so than you had years before. You have drivers' councils, you have track council, you have owners' council. So, the sport is ever evolving. And so I just don't know, really what it would mean, to be quite honest with you. It's like I said, it's not an easy question to answer. That's for sure.
Talking with Kerry Tharp, president of Darlington, but you can certainly understand that the big loyal NASCAR fan has got to be worried, KT. Look, I mean, your place is thriving. You've got a great niche with your throwback weekend. You're filling your place up. You've got the one race. It falls on a great weekend. There's no question that Darlington is thriving. But as you sit back and watch the races week in and week out, you see all the empty seats at the various tracks, and you hear grumbling about the quality of racing. And the critics are out there every weekend, picking the place apart. And the fans and now the fan hears that it might be up for sale, whatever that might mean. You can understand that the loyal, longtime NASCAR fans got to be worried.
Well, I'm not sure if worried's the right word, but I think that they probably were surprised when they heard that news yesterday. We still have a heck of a fan base, Phil, and it's and I know some of the crowds aren't what we would like to see at some of the venues, but there are some of the venues that are still doing quite well, and I think the racing is as good as it's been. I think you have more guys now that can win, although Harvick and Kyle Busch certainly have put a slant on that this season so far. But it's I don't know. I think the sport is kind of in an evolution right now. Like I said, it's much different than it was when I first got in some 12, 13 years ago, because I think there's now more input from the teams and the drivers maybe than there was before. And I guess we'll just have to see where this all goes. Go ahead.
This is a cyclical thing, KT, but you alluded to it. The fact that, again, the majority of the races are being won by one or two different drivers. I mean, that's not something that can be a help unless, of course, you get a protagonist-antagonist situation going on there where there's a bit of a rivalry. Other than that, I see, that's a detriment in my mind.
Yeah, it could be, Will. It is a little cyclical. Last year it was Truex winning a bunch of races. Year before, certainly Kyle Busch winning races. Now the Fords are on top of their game and certainly really dominating the last, really most of this season, if not all of it. So it's kind of an interesting time. To be honest with you, I will tell you that certainly we pay notice to it, but our main focus is obviously getting ready for the Labor Day weekend. But I know there's a lot of conversation and so forth going on out there about the sport, and so I do think this, and I believe this with all my heart. I think that the NASCAR racing is still very popular in the eyes and minds of the folks across the country, and people that haven't experienced it before. If they ever get an opportunity to go, I think they fall in love with it for the most part. So maybe we just need to kind of put all this aside and focus on the racing, focus on the events themselves, because they are, still in my mind, it is still the most popular form of motorsports, if not in the country, I think still in the world, and I've seen a bunch of them. But I think the NASCAR, the sport and the event itself offers a great deal of entertainment.
As always, KT, we thank you, man. Thank you for your insights, and have yourself a great weekend. We go racing at Kansas Saturday night. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
From the Pearl of the PD, Darlington Raceway, El Presidente, Kerry Tharp.
I don't think he really liked talking about that subject matter.
Well, I mean, he works for the Francis.
Yeah, I know.
And they own him.
They own him.
They own Darlington.
Yeah.
As well as several other tracks, including the sport itself.
These guys, they never sleep. Check them out on the web at SportsTalkSC.com. Now, more of Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network.
Looking towards tomorrow night, again, South Carolina will face College of Charleston, but tonight they are at Patriots Point playing their intra-city rivals, the Citadel. It's 8-5 in favor of the Cougars right now as they play in the top of the fifth inning. You have some other scores to pass along as well, Corn.
Yeah, and you have to think about the fact that they're playing tonight and they're in a high-scoring game. You wonder how much of their pitching they're going to use up tonight. As far as some other games, ACC, SEC, in-state, Winthrop leading Greensboro 3-1. That's top of the eighth. Wake Forest over Radford 5-1, sixth. Pittsburgh leading Penn State 1-0 in the fifth. Clemson's got Pittsburgh coming up weekend after next. Wright State is leading Louisville 4-2 in the sixth. Richmond leading North Carolina 2-1 in the fifth. And it's James Madison 4-2 over NC State. What about all these nationally ranked teams losing? That's in the fifth. South Florida leads Florida 6-4.
It's crazy.
In the fourth.
Crazy.
And Georgia Tech are playing. They were scoreless in about the third inning last time we saw.
I didn't mean to make light of the very delicate position Kerry Tharp is in as the president of Darlington, and of course having to deal with the possible rumor of basically his bosses selling their franchise that is NASCAR. This is on our Twitter at SportsTalkSC. Jonathan says, and he actually points this to Kerry's attention towards him in a mention. I know you're in a tough position, but I sat in Jim Hunter's NASCAR marketing class at USC in 2000 and heard him outline the plans that took the sport from its peak to where it is now. The sport ignored its core and is paying the price. It's sad. And that kind of speaks to what we were talking about yesterday a little bit with the same story.
Yeah, I mean, longtime NASCAR fans hold a grudge to some degree, and they didn't like how NASCAR cut races from the South and started putting races in tracks all over the country and giving them two races, took a race away from Darlington, closed down North Wilkesboro totally, closed down Rockingham totally, which is so sad. You ride by on US 1 going the back way to Raleigh, you go by that raceway, it's like a ghost town just sitting there, 60,000 seats, 3 lanes of racing room available there, and I think it's used for some testing purposes and things of that nature. But they didn't like that, and NASCAR, of course, trying to grow and become a national sport, felt like it had to go to Fontana, it had to go to Vegas, it had to go to New Hampshire, to try to hit these major markets, Chicago, Kansas, where they get them twice a year in some cases with these tracks.
They can do a road course in Charlotte. I mean, I understand
they're
what
trying
they're trying
everything they can to try to hit on a formula. But it goes back to what I always say about sports fans, and that is, if you forget about what the sport is about and you try all these other things, you're going to lose your true fan. You're going to have the drive-by fan who might come occasionally, and especially when things are going well. But when things go poorly or they got something else on their mind they want to do, they're not going to show up. It's just like I complain about the basketball atmospheres at Clemson and Carolina, where they spend so much time trying to entertain the fan in the seat because they think that they don't have the focus ability to enjoy a game for the game's sake. They got to have all this other stuff. And I think that you lose the true fan who's there who wants to be there for the game and for the band. In the college setting, you're talking about the players, the game, the band, the cheerleaders, all this other stuff that that they're now doing in these arenas. I don't know. To me, it's just a big turnoff.
You had this email that came in about,
but I'm a spoiled sport.
You had this email that came in about South Carolina baseball attendance. Is this along the same lines that you are referring to here?
Well, we got an email in here from a listener about South Carolina and attendance. He goes, longtime listener, lifetime Gamecock fan. I do not understand why there are so many empty seats at Founders Park for the games. This was written before the Ole Miss series with LSU, Mississippi. And besides the big crowd for Saturday LSU game, we have 2,000 or 3,000 empty seats. Now, you were there for all three over the weekend.
So Friday's crowd was good. Saturday's crowd was not what I expected. And Sunday, again, both the two weekend game crowds had a lot of people leave early.
Well, think about this.
It was very hot. I'll give you that. It was hot.
Yeah, but, Saturday they're starting games because of television at 4 o'clock.
Right.
Now, I think that, first of all, you're wasting half of a great afternoon.
Right. And it doesn't necessarily give you much relief from the sunlight to play it at 4 o'clock.
It's still going to be hot then. But, people, as much as they might love baseball, they've got other things going on a Saturday night.
Of course.
And
I'm not begrudging people for not going to a 4 o'clock game on a Saturday.
Right. I just think here you are doing something first for television and not for the fans who want to come to the games. And that's where all sports organizations have forgotten. They'll do anything for television, and the fans' needs come second. And eventually, as you're going to see the continued erosion of attendance in the arenas, and now you're going to see you're seeing where ESPN, the biggest provider and the biggest pain when it comes to all this stuff, the erosion of their audience and people cutting the cord, and the golden goose is going to die eventually. And the people who run sports better wake up and recognize that, or bank their money as much as they possibly can, because you're going to milk that thing dry eventually. It may not be 10 years from now, it may be 50 years from now, and who will care then? I don't know. I won't, but it's going to happen.
Well, it's weird. I mean, like, you would think that there would be some increased momentum for the way they've been playing. I know there's, again, like we've talked about, and this plays into what we'll see tomorrow with the Chad Holbrook return. But I mean, there were some hurt feelings. I think a lot of people were hurt by the way last year went. I know that fans can't afford to have long memories. You look at the immediacy, the fact that you got a baseball team that's competing for an opportunity to play in the NCAA tournament. Granted, I know that that's not where South Carolina evidently and ideally wants to be, but I mean, you can only control what you can control in your own situation. Fact of the matter is, again, I'm not asking here and sitting here begging Gamecock fans to have interest in a baseball program that is not as good as it has been historically.
Well, how was the crowd at Clemson last night?
Crowd at Clemson, while late arriving, very rowdy, rowdiest I've seen there.
But how full?
It was full.
Yeah,
it was pretty full. It was not as full in the outfield, but it was. I mean, the from baseline to baseline, it was full.
Well, still, South Carolina, of course, now, and this is one of my gripes, they don't announce actual attendance, even though they call it attendance.
Yeah.
They announce tickets sold, and they still are, I think, fourth in the SEC in attendance, I say with air quotes, because, again, I think if you're going to use the word attendance,
right,
it should relate to the number of people actually in the stands, butts in the seats. That's what the word attendance means. Clemson. Now, if you want to clarify that and say, we had 6,500 tickets sold for this game, but actual attendance was 2,200. That would be truthful. That would be fairer.
It wasn't that the numbers that South Carolina reported over the weekend were not that far off. I think the Saturday number was closer to the truth. It was about 6,700, I think, was the Saturday number. There were 68 they announced on Saturday, and I think it was about 6,200 on Sunday. That one, I think, seemed a little nefarious. But again,
a little what?
Nefarious, as in fake.
It's a big word.
Fake. Clemson.
Did you learn that word in D.C.? That's a good place to learn that word. Nefarious.
Clemson announced 4,600 last night. And I think that was pretty accurate. And again, it was rowdy. And the one thing, again, I will say is that, again, the Sunday crowd for South Carolina, while they were there, they weren't all there. Like, they were having to get prodding and goading from the players. Like, anytime they wanted them to get loud, it was the players who were basically, urging them on to do so. And again, it seemed, again, almost like a lackluster crowd.
Well, tomorrow you'll be over at Spirit Communications Park.
Looking forward to it.
And I'll be up in Greenwood and doing what I was put on this planet to do, and that is, everybody knows I was put on this planet to play golf. Got a little Pro-Am with the Symetra Tour event up at Stony Point outside of Greenwood, and we'll be there for that, and we'll be there to talk about the things there. I also want to mention that America's team, the New York Yankees, thanks to Giancarlo Stanton, leading Russia's Communist Party team, the Boston Red Sox, 1-0.
Are you going to go
to their game at Yankee Stadium?
Are you going to go to that series in London next year, that 2-game series?
Already got my hotel booked. I got my tickets.
Are you kidding me?
Ready to go.
I thought you would
I'll broadcast from there.
I thought that you wouldn't go there because of a personal protest for them moving that series.
Other reasons.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.